when you ask a question on that day one and allow the patient to like give their words and their language. Are you interrupting them? Are you already on to the next question in your mind? Or are you truly listening and also listening for what they're not saying and what their body language is telling you too? Hello, and welcome to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. This podcast is dedicated to chiropractors who are in the seasons of launching and building their practice. Join myself, Dr. Lona, and my co-host, Dr. Bobby, as we have conversations each week as it relates to building the practice of your dreams. And remember, you can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. We're here to lead you on the way.
What's up, team? Welcome to the Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Joining us today with the amazing Dr. Lona Cook. Dr. Lona, what's going on? How you doing?
Hey, Dr. Bobby, I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic as well. Awesome to connect with you again. And of course, guys, myself, Dr. Bobby Ilijasri from the Remarkable Practice. So Dr. Lona, last time we were talking about attraction and marketing, and I must say, I got really pumped up and excited by that. So that for us now was a couple of weeks ago. And so I want to share this story with you guys because it just goes to show that, when you're surrounding yourself with people that are on fire, and you stick your hand in a pot of glue, something's going to stick. So last week, I got really pumped up about what we're talking about. And so we had a massive marketing week last week. We had a dinner workshop that was planned. Our social media ads, we really dialed them in a lot. And our internal, what I call Parley systems, where we get one new patient coming from external activities, and then we start to compound that with internal referrals, just went electric. And we had a week last week, which was probably one of our biggest, I think, single new patient weeks, where we had 62 new patients that we signed up, coming actually in day one, prepayments, money collected, or we had a dinner, we kicked it out of the park. We smashed it, then our social media leads were dialed in. We're getting, I think, about 21 or 22 new leads last week from social media. And we just compounded all of it with all these internal referrals. So thank you so much for last week's episode. It sure pumped me up.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Bobby, you said something there. You said that you call it the parlay system. And I think, maybe you're listening to this and you are just starting out, or maybe you have just one CA. And so you're 62 new patients. That's just mind blowing, right? So, thinking about what you said with the word parlay, and I want to just make this really simple. It's when a patient or a practice member starts talking about someone that, they love and a health issue going on with them, or something that they, are bringing up with you, whether that's at a regular visit or at a reeval. I think many times we drop the ball where we don't actually go the next step, where we might say, yeah, that's great, bring them in. But we could do such a better job at parlaying the referral there, whether that's bringing them up to the front desk and making sure to reiterate and hand off strongly to CAs. And Dr. Bobby, I'd love for you to just how did you come up with calling it the parlay system? And maybe if you're okay with it, give us a couple tips, because that's such a gem, what you just said there, to not drop the ball on what's happening in the practice there.
Yeah, it actually segues perfectly what we're going to be talking about today, because we're going to be talking about your conversion processes and how to elevate your conversion to the next level, regardless of where you're at the moment. And it's very similar with what we do when we create this parlay or compounding effect, like I like to call it as well. So I recognized, Dr. Lona, very early on that literally, when I walk the streets, any single human being that I see, my eyes look at them and go, that person should be under chiropractic care, right? That's just my belief. I believe that if you want to maintain the health of your spine and nervous system and optimize your body long-term, you need to be under chiropractic care long-term, right? So every new patient coming into my office, what I recognized is that person just needed to also understand that as well and believe that too, right? Why does it make sense for me to do something, okay, but my children to not do that? So I started to recognize that, okay, rather than waiting, we used to wait until week 4 where we make a bigger effect to be hey, do you know anyone? And the reason why I used to wait to week 4 is I used to kind of think in my mind, well, first of all, this person has to have awesome results to refer somebody in, right? And then I started to realize, well, no, I can actually do it at week 2. And then I started to realize, well, no, actually I can do it at week 1. And then for a long time, I started to realize, no, I can actually do it from day 1. The moment the person comes in, we can start through the office tour, the meet and greet, the way that we're doing our pre-consult, the way we're doing our OPKRST. We can do our whole entire day 1 through a lens of yeah, we're looking for subluxation in you, but this happens in everyone. And then we told one, probably in like 3 years ago, I realized, well, what the heck? Why not do it at day 0? Which means like when you're meeting them for the first time. So for example, last week I was doing a dinner workshop. Why not just build it into the dinner workshop? And from that point say, hey, this happens in everyone. One thing that we know after seeing thousands and tens of thousands of patients is this doesn't just happen to people with back pain. This is happening in all of us right now, sitting down, and your kids, in my family, right? And so that's what I realized. Let's just put it earlier in our system. And then as a result of that, what I recognize is when you put it in day 0, okay, and day 0 is any marketing that you're doing. So last week we did a dinner and we did social media advertising, for example. You know, the moment that our team is calling someone on social media and that person makes a commitment and says, yep, book me in, I want to come in. The next line for that is our team goes straight into, hey, did you want to organize this just for yourself, or did you want to organize this for your family as well? Such a great offer. Most people are organizing for their family to get everyone assessed. Just makes sense. And even if the person says, no, that's okay, which about half will say, actually, that's a great idea. The ones that say no, what I've done is I've still planted the seed, right? And then what you do is on day 1, you start to like water and you start to nourish that seed, right? By giving it a little bit more water and a little bit more nourishment. Hey, this happens in everyone. See, subluxation, stress on the spine occurs in me, you. In fact, my little girl, she's 15 months old. She's walking around now. You know what she's doing a lot? Falling on her backside, right? And so guess what? That's an example of physical stress on her body, right? So you just have to plant it like that earlier on, and you pick fruits earlier and earlier. So big tip is don't wait for week 4 like I used to, or week 2, or even like day 1. Do it from day 0. Put it into your marketing processes, and you'll be shocked at what happens when you do it with conviction, which is what we're going to be talking about today, right?
So good. We could end the podcast right there. That was great.
All right. Great episode, guys. That was great fun. Lona, I'll catch you next week, huh?
Right. Yes.
I
Thank
love it. I love it.
Nugget.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're going to share more about that. I'm sure we'll do an episode in the future about what I call the Parley effect in my office. And effectively, I've been saying this for years. It's how do you take one new patient, turn them into 3? And really, you know, you do that on repeat. So definitely write this down. We're going to make sure we do an episode on this in the future, right?
Yeah.
But today, we're really excited, guys, because what we're going to be talking about today is a continuation from last week. Last week, we were talking about, all right, well, how do we really take our attraction systems to the next level? And we spoke a lot about how your attraction is a reflection of your certainty. And if you want to take your attraction to the next level, you've got to take your certainty to the next level, right? Today, we want to move to the next step, which is the conversion process. And I love what Dr. Franson says about this, Lona, when he says, you know, we can only help the ones that we start. We can only help the ones that we convert, which means you and I both know we have this amazing product in chiropractic, right? This amazing message in that the majority of population does not know, but everybody needs to hear, okay? Yet we can only help somebody if somebody chooses to start care. And so I was talking to one of my newest associates last week, and, you know, we're making an interesting observation. This is what he said to me. He's literally like 5 weeks in, and he started from scratch in our office, and 5 weeks in, he's already cracked 90 visits a week. And here's what he says to me. He goes, here's what I realized, Bob. He goes, when somebody chooses to start care, so when a practice member or a patient sits there on day 2, we give our recommendations in day 2, and that person says yes to our recommendations, everyone wins. He's like, what I recognize is that patient wins because I'm so excited. I know we're going to transform their health and transform their life and therefore help that individual and their family. He goes, I win. I'm getting busier. I'm like serving my purpose. I'm earning more income, right? Like I'm stoked. The practice wins, right? It gets busier in here. There's more family. There's more social proof for other people. Our team wins because our team loves seeing more people on our team, you know, has bonuses around that. He's like, everybody wins. But he goes, you know what I realized? When someone gets in their own head and chooses to not start care, everyone loses. That patient loses, I lose, the practice loses, our team loses, every single person loses. And he goes, so what I've started to realize is that the conversion process, it's actually not about me. I used to think that it was about me, but it's about everyone starting off with that patient. That's a really good point, right? It's a really, really good point. So talk to me about conversion, Dr. Lona. I know you guys are masters at this. So we say that if your attraction is a reflection of your certainty, okay, then your conversion is a reflection of your conviction. I'd love to know about conversion process in your office. Why don't you give us a bit of a overarching story about, okay, how does that work in your office? what's the experience you've had with this? And if you don't mind, we're going to go deeper into like, all right, what are some practical things about how do you guys train so you can really elevate your conversion process, your day one, day two, and start the maximum amount of people inside of your office?
Right. Well, when we say the word conviction, I do think when you think about like, gosh, am I convicted? Or is this like what I feel in my heart of hearts, like I'm serving my purpose? That's part of your conviction, right? So when we talked about at the last on the last podcast, this certainty, cultivating your certainty, a lot of that goes hand in hand with then also the conviction you have that yes, I can help people. Yes, they're showing up in my office for a reason. Yes, I need to lead them, and chiropractic is the tool I'm going to use. And I think if you don't feel that yet, that's where you go back and listen to the last podcast too, and think about where you're at with your certainty, and how you might maybe need to double down on some of that, because it will lead to stronger conviction as well. And so when I think about, whether we're training in new docs in the office, or just if I think of my own experience in becoming convicted, certainly my philosophy was a big part of that. And knowing that, gosh, what spoke to me and what I was like witnessing in my own life. And if I thought about like the trajectory for me becoming a chiropractor, that led itself to having like a certain level of conviction. So, I grew up in a family that I got adjusted since I was basically a couple months old. I was colicky. And what I didn't know was actually that my dad had been adjusted since he was young. My grandfather had been adjusted since he was young. And my great grandmother took my grandfather because she knew that they got sick less often and she did not have money for the medical doctor. So when I think about the level of conviction, just even in my family lineage about chiropractic, it's no wonder that I chose this as a profession. And I offer that to you because I think sometimes we're so short-sighted when and Dr. Bobby just opened that up when he said like everybody wins when we do this well, right? Like that's one of the beautiful parts about chiropractic is we're selling something that's in harmony with nature's laws, which I think is why it's like, gosh, you've got this truth. Why not serve it? Why not become convicted around it? But that's part of like how you get into your heart state to go in and first of all connect. That's a big part of the conversion process, is listening, right? And like really letting that person feel you, that you're here to serve them, because that's what this is about, right? Like we can give you scripts, but if you actually don't want to serve them, like maybe this isn't the right profession for you, right? And so some of this cannot be trained, it has to be felt. And that's why, Dr. Bobby, you said like, this is an emotional time for the patient. And this is why, there's certain things we have to be aware of when we're guiding someone through these first few visits, especially, is that many times they're coming from a paradigm where this is different for them. They also might be a little nervous, for a doctor to sit and listen to them and actually connect some dots for them. This could be a really like, this is why they want to refer them, because this is a new experience if it goes well.
Yep, spot on the mark, 100%. There's so much at stake. I used to, I used to think in my mind, conversion is about me. I want to get busy. I want to get busy. And what I realized actually is like this person in front of me is probably only going to have one opportunity ever to hear the message of chiropractic, like how I'm going to put it together now. And if I stuff this up in some way, then they may never have the opportunity again to see a principal chiropractor and actually get the care that they need. So what I realized is there's actually a lot more at stake for them. And I love what you said there, Lona, about we're so blessed because we work in this profession where everyone wins. Someone, let's say, that works in a cigarette company, like you sell a product where clearly everybody doesn't win. You know what I'm saying, right? Somebody wins at the expense of somebody else. So we're so blessed. Never forget that. And when people start care, everybody wins. So here's what I'd love. I'd love to get into some practical stuff. I'd love, and I'm going to pass over to you in a couple of minutes' time to just get some practical stuff about how do we build our conviction and what are some things in your office specifically that you guys do to really take your conversion process to the next level. But I'll give you a moment to think about that, Lona, because I just want to share this for a second. When I first heard that your conversion is a reflection of your conviction, I used to think conviction, sure, that's just like the way that I communicate something and like, how certain I feel around it. What was the difference between conviction and certainty? I didn't really know how to delineate the two. I was like, well, certainty and conviction, I don't know, are they both the same thing? And what I learned and recognized is that what conviction actually meant is conviction is how do I feel about how you feel what you're telling me. So if you're telling me something and somebody is communicating with me and they're attempting to influence me, Conviction is, how do I, as the person that you're trying to influence, feel about how you feel what you're telling me? Or do I see through what you're telling me? Or do I not believe that you believe what you're telling me? That's what conviction is. So when we're communicating something in a report of findings and we're giving recommendations and we're doing time, energy, money recommendations, conviction is me looking at you and saying, okay, how do you feel? How much do you 100% authentically believe that this is exactly what I need in order to hit my goals that we discussed together on day one and again through day two? Right? That's what the conviction process is. So I'm going to unpack for you guys. We're going to go through this together now and unpack some tools around this. How do you elevate your conviction and therefore elevate your conversion process? Okay. And in the future, we're going to unpack the different components of a day two. But today I want to take something that anyone can use, whether you just started in the office or whether you're someone that's 15 years out and seeing 1,000 visits a week, right? So, Dr. Lona, with that, I'm going to pass it over to you. I know you guys have got a rockstar DC team, multiple associates. So training this across multiple people definitely has a skill set to it. But what are some things, some practical things that you do in your offices that really helps build your build your conviction and therefore have a positive impact on your conversion process?
Right. Well, I think it is a left and right brain experience. And so there is like both the like do these things and say these things, and this is the order they go in. And also, I want to take my entire staff, because we're all involved in the conversion process, to places where they're going to grow in their certainty and their, whether that's philosophical certainty, clinical certainty, whether we're, going to Syntropy and getting, we're going to be there in April to work on making sure that we can deliver the goods, all of us, in a similar way, so that if a patient sees me or they see someone else, like we're adjusting and we have certainty behind this clinical skill that we're offering. So I think it's multifaceted there, but if I think about some like quick things that help the conversion process, number one, I would give yourself, like, rate yourself. Like, how well do you do at just shutting up and listening when you ask a question on that day one and allow the patient to like give their words and their language? Are you interrupting them? Are you already on to the next question in your mind? Or are you truly listening, and also listening for what they're not saying and what their body language is telling you too? Because again, we're developing rapport in that first time. And so if we don't have the rapport, it's hard to move them to the next phase, if you will. So that's one thing. The other part is like, the more that you can realize that what you're saying is important, but also the visuals you're giving them and the experience in the office is part of the conversion process. And so there's a lot of nonverbals that we need to look at too, of like what they're hearing, what your staff is doing. Because if this is all an emotional process, we want to have all of those things be in alignment with what we're trying to get across. So looking at that element of your office too, of like, what am I saying, and what am I, maybe my scripts, but also what is being said just when you walk in the door, and that experience. And then of course, especially if you're considering getting coached, or looking at TRP, you're going to be training weekly on these things, because we want to create repeatability, and that makes you more referable. So training on all the facets of like day one, day two, day three, and the nuances of like the right language to use to help do our best job of communicating well, so that people do know what we're offering them and can make an educated choice. Because like Dr. Bobby said, they may not hear this otherwise, and that's on us to get really, really good at communicating. So those would be three of my things: is like, are you listening? Are you really, really listening? And you're listening if you can catch their word choice and use it when you talk back to them. Are you aware of what's happening around your office as nonverbal cues? And are you using visuals and tactile things to help them understand, this process of what decision making looks like for day one, day two, day three? And then with your staff, how often are you actually training?
Wow. All right. There was a golden nugget in there, guys. I want to highlight this so you guys don't miss it. So Dr. Lona said something that sounds simple, but is actually hugely profound. And what she said is, are you actually listening? Or are you in your head and are you in your mind just kind of like waiting for the person to finish so you can get onto your next question, because there's a sequence that you've got to go through that you've either been taught or trained or that you've developed yourself. But there's something actually super powerful in listening. And she said something there key, guys, where she mentioned repeating the exact words that somebody uses to you. So if somebody describes their pain and they say, oh, the pain is dull and it's pounding, okay? I don't want to later summarize and say, oh, okay, so you got this, you got this pain just on the right-hand side. It's not too intense. No, I want to use the same words, right? So you've had this dull pounding pain on the right side. How long has it been going on for? And those little nuances, remember, I once played this game, right? And the game was, I'm not sure if you ever played this, Lona, but the game is, you think of a song in your head, all right? So favorite song. And then you've got to clap the beat of that song, right? And in your mind, it's so clear what the song is, but the other person sits there and looks at you like you're some crazy person, has no idea what you've been clapping. And you're like, are you kidding? It's so easy. It's Thunderstruck by AC/DC. Listen to it. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes no sense. So it's a great exercise for how people view the world. We all view the world through our own lens, and that lens is defined by the experiences that we've had and the people that we've met. So what's important is that we actually listen and you pick up on the words and look at someone's facial expressions when they use those words and repeat that back to them. So when someone has a word, not only do you repeat the word, repeat the tonality and the facial expression they used when they said that word. Because that's how they feel about it emotionally. I'm sure you guys do this intuitively, but I want to point that out because that was an absolute nugget. Dr. Lona, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. And I want to ask you, give us like a bit of an overview. What does your day 2 process look like? So specifically, I'm a person, I've been to your day 1. Great. Okay. In fact, let's start with day 1. I'm a new person. I'm coming into your office. Give me just like a high level overview of like, what does a day 1 process look like in your office? And then same with day 2.
Yep. So, we ideally have had them fill out a digital intake form in advance. So they'd walk in and they'd automatically go where we have a little education. We have a video, which actually is made down by you that we play. That's about 3 minutes. I think it's like Aussie Chiro or Edu Chiro or something like that. But it comes.
Okay. Yes, I know the one.
Yeah. Okay. So they watch the 3-minute video while the doc is either finishing up with someone else or gives them a little bit of time to look at the paperwork if they didn't have it in advance. And then I should back up that the CAs have also started doing like the scans and the Posture Pro in advance. So when the doc comes in, they've got all that information there. They can start the process of just asking the consultation questions. And so one of the things that I always say is like, I want you to ask a very open-ended question, and just that tells us a lot to hear what that person gives you. Because some people are going to just give you a couple nuggets and like they don't want to talk that much, and then you've got to drag it out. And other people, like if you let them have the floor, they're going to use as much time as you give them, right? And that is
And
also
more.
letting you know. Yes, and more, right. But if we actually are quiet, usually within a couple of minutes, people have told you what they need to tell you, right? And then you can go on and ask the question. So that's a huge part of like when we're talking high level things before we get into like nitty gritty. That's always something I say is like just ask an open-ended question and then listen and watch what happens. It's going to tell you a lot about the personality they have, if they're a driver, if they're, somebody who just wants to like connect, things like that. So we're looking at those things. We kind of do a brief synopsis of like why the CA did the scans that we take, and that we let them know that we'll get more into that the next time that they're in. And then we'll get them on the table and feel the spine and do range of motion and different things like that we want to collect that help us know like the state of movement that their spine is in. And this is all part of like us gathering the details that will help us put together a proper report for them. So a lot of what we're doing on day 1 is telling them after they've shared, we get to share, which is that we need to get all of this information so that we know how we can best help them and put together recommendations that are appropriate for the goals that they've hopefully shared with us. And so then when we parlay it off to the CAs to round out that visit, we're making recommendations for the follow-up where they would go over their reported findings or their recommendations and then be adjusted.
Okay.
And finances set up.
And can I ask you a question? Do you have a rule in your office around your report of findings, your day 2, how soon after day 1 it should be booked?
Not so much a rule. We have an expectation that we would like for it to be done within 2 days. So most of the time, if they're in on a Monday or Tuesday, their report of findings would be on a Wednesday or Thursday. If they're a new patient on a Friday, we might have to wait till Monday or Tuesday, but quick.
So I want you guys to hear there, right? What Dr. Lona has basically said is that most of the report of findings are going to get in within 72 hours of day 1, right? We call that the law of 72. So I want to share with you guys that there's this emotion that I like to say is the magical fairy dust that when you sprinkle it onto things, everything works better. Okay. And that emotion is urgency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? When you move with urgency, it doesn't matter whether you're at a day one and you just sign someone up and you're like, all right, hey, let's get you in ASAP. Why? Because we know underlying issues when left progress at a rapid rate. Urgency, people come in faster. If we do exactly what Dr. Lona has said and go through a day one process and collect meaningful information, go through an empathetic connection with somebody, go through a discovery process that we're asking great questions, then we're going through an examination process where each exam is building value for the next one and the next one and the next one, right? Okay, when we collect those results, yeah, we want people in within 72 hours. That's urgency. And someone is like, oh, yeah, book me in today here is Wednesday. Book me in Friday week, right? We in our office saying, actually, we've got a policy that we get these reports back in within 72 hours. Why? Main reason, underlying issues when left progress at a rapid rate. So we want to get on top of this as soon as possible, right?
Mm.
Also, these scans that we've just taken today and the team has done today become invalid in 7 days. So we need to get you in here as soon as possible. And we're not afraid to get someone in that day, that shift. Someone comes in at 10 o'clock, go and get your x-rays done. Fantastic. Go get a coffee, walk around the block, come back. He'll put you at the end of the shift at 11:45 and let's get your report done straight away. And it's funny, my latest associate, I was teaching him this. And, probably as of filming this now, he has done 7 same shift turnarounds. So same shift turnaround means, all right, new patient comes in, goes through the process, gets x-ray scans, everything comes back 2 hours later for the report. Of those 7, guess how many have converted into care?
7.
All 7. You got it, right? Actually, 6 now. Yesterday, 1 came in, didn't convert, right? You did that yesterday. 6 out of 7, right? Still really good conversion rate. So 6 out of 7 in converted strength care. And I'm talking 36 care plans mapped, paid in full, right? All progress exams, everything mapped out in advance. Why? Because urgency is that fairy dust, right?
Yeah.
Which I absolutely love. So, all right, awesome. And then tell me a little bit about day 2. So high level overview. I've heard, do you do things like, okay, your first part of day 2, you'll go through a general report where you teach someone how to read x-rays, and then you go to the second part, individual report, where they show you what's going on. What does a high level overview of day 2 look like for you?
Yeah, so we actually don't use x-rays in our office, so that is different, but we use scans. So we use Insight, and we have like normal scans or scans that have, the bars where they're nice and white and green, and that this is what we're working for, and we show them kind of a high level of like, here's what a normal or a healthy scan would look like, and then here's yours, right? So there is a comparison there. Same thing with Posture Pro, understanding what a plumb line view is, and obviously almost everyone that comes in has forward head carriage because we're Americans, and I mean the whole world is like that probably at this point, right? So but understanding like your head should be 11 pounds and it's actually 21 pounds is like important for them to be aware of. So again, building that curiosity on day 1, that they want to know what your recommendations are and they want to have all of these things put together. And I think, again, doing that from a place of really integrity. If you think about your own family member, if they went to another chiropractor and that chiropractor just kind of glossed over, didn't explain what they were looking at, didn't explain, if the person's on the table, even things like checking leg length, why are you looking at it? Like maybe you don't have x-ray or a lot of objective findings in your mind that you've, been doing. Like, can you explain to them your technique and why they're subluxated in certain places? Like people want to understand, but we have to do it in a simple way that builds curiosity about, well, why is my body like that? And what is the recommendations the doctor have? So that's really what we're doing is on day 2 is we're sharing what we gathered from day 1. And then we're laying out a visual that shows them not only what we gathered on day 1, but a visual of what the calendar of adjustments would look like. So set number of adjustments over set amount of time and a set financial arrangement. So, in our office, they can pay in full or split it into monthly payments. And it includes where their reevals will happen, where they know that we're going to come back in and look at those objective findings and remeasure. So we're holding them accountable to getting the progress that we know is possible.
So I heard you say that you have 2 options, which is one pay in full and one is pay monthly amounts. So I'm going to be a little bit of the objection manager here, right? Dr. Lona, what about the person that says, can I pay visit to visit?
Yeah, so I'm not a hard no on that. I say you can, it's just more expensive. So just like if you buy a can of pop, it's more expensive than if you buy a case, right? Like it's the same concept, and that the for us, then the arrangement is always there for them. So if they want to buy a plan on visit 3, we let them buy a plan on visit 3 or visit 6. But I know probably Bobby, you do it differently. So
What makes you say that, Lona?
yeah, because you probably do. I'd love to hear it.
So look, for me, everything, I always just come back to the why behind things. And if I'm clear in my head, funnily enough, if I'm convicted in my mind, then my communication on it is easy and effortless. And so I think in my head, why is it? Just ask yourself the question, why? Why is it better that someone pays in full, or why is it better that someone does monthly installments? And when I actually, sat there and scratched my head about this and thought, what's in it for the patient? Why is it better? It became very clear to me, right? And here's what I realized. It's so much easier for us to track. If someone has paid in full or paying monthly amount, it's so much easier for our team to track to ensure that somebody gets the right amount of adjustments in the right period of time. So I was looking in my office at that time, and I worked out everybody who was more or less paying visit to visit were more likely to miss a visit, were more likely to not stick to their recommendations, were more likely, instead of this week to get the 3 adjustments, I get 1 adjustment, we're more likely to, I miss this week and put me on next week, right? And all those things, did they lead to better results or worse results for the patient? And when I actually sat there and looked at that, I was like, they actually compromise the results of the patient. And so that moment became really clear in my head. The reason we do care plans is because it allows us as a team to track more accurately so that somebody gets the right amount of adjustments in the right period of time, and therefore maximizing results and outcomes that they get. So for me, yeah. So for me, I guess in answer to your question, we are a little bit more of like a hard line around it. And when someone gives me any objection, like I want to get to the why of that objection, the why of that objection usually means that someone still doesn't fully believe. We talk about in the Remarkable Practice 4 agreements: agree on the problem, agree on the goals, agree on the path, agree on the plan. We'll talk about this in the next upcoming episodes. Problem, goal, path, plan. In my mind, I'm like, they still don't agree on something. They probably still don't agree on the problem. They might think that, okay, I get what you're saying, but I'm not 100% sold on, yes, that's what the issue is, right? So maybe in future episodes, we can actually go into detail now and talk about the process of day 2, and we can role play and script, and we'll take you through exactly how that looks like. But for me, everything, just start with the why. Like, what's the why behind a care plan? And for me, the why behind financial plan, pardon me, the why behind a financial plan is that it allows us to track people to ensure they get the right amount of adjustments in the right period of time, therefore get better results and outcomes that are more predictable. Full stop. Yeah. So one thing I want to share with everyone, and I would say this is the number one tip. This is the number one rule for me. Like, before we go into any systems, process, procedure, Lona, you struck it in their head when you're like, all right, you've got to come from the heart. Get out of your head and come from the heart. So one thing that I tell all of my associates, first report of findings training starts with this. It's actually pre-report of findings, all right? It happens pre-day 1 and pre-report of findings. And I call this the anchoring process, because if you ever find yourself in a day 1 or a day 2 getting a little bit anxious, getting a little bit too fast, getting quick in your communication, I like to say getting a little bit sympathetically dominant. I'm sure everybody listening to this call knows what I'm talking about. When you're in that sympathetic system, right, where you're talking with someone, okay, whenever you find yourself getting sympathetically dominant and you're not in control of that communication, you always need to stay in a state of parasympathetic dominance. So you're cool, calm, rested. You're leading a conversation and not being led in a conversation. There's a difference. Every conversation, every dialogue, guys, one person's leading, one person's following. So I always ensure that, number one, we stay parasympathetically centered, so that regardless of whether it's that person that yaps away or the person you've got to extract information out of, we're leading that dialogue and we're leading that conversation. And the way that we do that is, let's just talk report of findings. We have a way to do this for day 1 as well, but I'll just share with you the report of findings system that we do. I tell all my DCs, okay, this is the exact protocol, step-by-step pre-report of findings that gets us in the right state, okay? First thing we do is we rule out time, obviously, in our calendar, and we have a look. I instruct everyone, look at the name of the person in front on the calendar. So Lona Cook, close your eyes and actually visualize Lona. So visualize her energy, what she was like, what her primary chief complaint was, what her demeanor was like, how she presented, how she'd find us. Get that picture of her in your mind. Now, here's the deal. I actually don't meet anyone until day 2. We have tech CAs that do all of day 1. So how do I do this? Well, I picture the avatar, look at your form, like, all right, Lona, age, okay, she has kids. I picture what, like where you've come from, because I can see you came from a dinner, you came from an ad, you came from referrals. So I get you in my mind. Then step 2, I look at your initial intake form in detail. Meaning if you're asking people to fill out a intake form, guys, actually analyze that form in detail. And like what you said, Lona, before, look at the words that people use. Where do they circle in the diagram? Look at, out of 10, what's their pain perception? Look at out of 10, what's their commitment to fixing the cause of the issue? Definitely look at life effects. And even if it says mild effect on sleep or mild effect on energy, to me, mild effect is a freaking effect. Because it was no effect, someone would write no effect, or they don't recognize they've got a blind spot. If someone writes mild effect, don't look at it as a mild effect. Look at it as that person has recognized that aspect of their life is getting affected, full stop. And we can water anything down if we are likely to water down. So I look at life effect, then I look at commitment to getting it fixed with no judgment. If someone has written 5 out of 10, I don't judge it and go, this person's not committed, right? I look at it and go, okay, that's where their headspace and perception to that question is at. Then I look at goals and I look at health continuum, okay? Then step 3, once I've done that and I've started to construct this picture together, then I look at the history intake form, which is what did the tech CA, or if it was another chiropractor, like one of my associates, what did they take as the history? Wow, when Lona came in, actually, she described it as radiating pain. She described here that it affects her when she picks up the kids. It goes down to her left arm. She described here that she stopped exercising and doing X, Y, Z as a result of this. She described here that, yeah, her sleep is terrible. She gets enough sleep, but, her aura-ing is telling her she hasn't had the best sleep now for months, even years. So that really helps me understand, what did we extract out of her when we had a conversation, a dialogue, right? And only once I've done then that 3-step process, only then do I look at, we do use X-ray. So only then do I look at your X-ray. And I tell my team, there's this little moment every time, now doing this for 10 years and thousands of reports, every time there's this little moment that I have that when I look at someone's X-ray, and I can't use profanities on this podcast, but like when I look at the X-ray, there's this little voice inside of my head that says, fudge, I'm good, right? Or more accurately, how good is chiropractic? How good is the knowledge that I possess around chiropractic? Because here's this person that's coming with all his issues, that's seen X, that's seen Y, that doesn't know what's going on. It's affecting this, it's affecting that, it's affecting no answers, bang. And with my examination protocol, there's the answer right there. How amazing is chiropractic? And every single time I have this little just dialogue like that, it's a healthy ego. People talk about healthy ego. There's this healthy ego that says, how good is chiropractic and how good is the knowledge that you have? And only then, when we're in that state, all right, we stop, complete conviction about what's going on there and what the cause of it is. Take a few deep breaths in, parasympathetic state. When you're right frame of mind, open your eyes, go out there and grab the person for their individual report, right? So I can't stress that enough, because we can teach you the system, and we will. We'll go through systems in further podcasts. But it's like how you show up before, and learn what you were saying before is genius about listening to what people are saying, the words that you're using, how you're saying it, right? And write all this down, guys, because when you do your review in day 2, this is the stuff that makes all the difference in the world. Have you experienced being the same?
Yeah, and I loved how you just walked us through that anchoring process. There's so much there energetically of you just taking that moment to center your own energy on that person. I'm, as you guys probably are picking up on these podcasts, I'm very much into understanding more of like the quantum energy behind things. And so, Bobby, there's the focus of putting that extra moment on, like, I'm here to serve this person. I'm actually taking the moment to revisit the notes that we're taking. Whereas I think a lot of people get busier in practice and all of a sudden, like, you don't do those things, right? Or maybe you never did them in the first place because you didn't know. So it's like when we are good stewards of the like people that are coming in, whether that's 5 a week or 500 a week, we're going to energetically be given more if we can create the container and the systems around that. So that was great.
Yep, 100%. So there you have it, guys. Your conversion will be a reflection of your conviction every single time. So what can you be doing to build your conviction? We shared some of our tips and some of our strategies in the office. Dr. Lona, awesome call. I'm looking forward to doing more conversion calls. I know people are going to be asking us around, all right, can we go deeper into the system side of things? Exactly. How do you structure your day 2, general report, individual report? Some people want to be doing group reports. So I know, guys, that's an episode that we're going to make in the future. But Lona, awesome as always. Love hearing your insights and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bobby. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Hey, don't forget, if you're loving this, make sure we'll leave in the show notes a link, guys, to both of our calendars. If you guys want to have a chat, if you want to work out how to accelerate your conversion process, we can do that for you. And of course, leave us a 5-star review on the podcast app. We appreciate that. We love you, and we'll see you guys next time.
Woo-woo. Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, please click the links in the show notes to schedule a call.